Hi, welcome. This is Angela of Ascended World, bringing you element 15 of the course on forgiveness as part of the Adventures in Wonderland program. And as we start element 15, we're starting the third grouping of 7 elements that have to do with a certain kind of energy for forgiveness. And in this grouping, it's relationships. So all of the elements for today and then the next 6 days after that are all about like how we have interactions and relationships with others and how that affects us and causes judgment and exclusion and inclusion and all kinds of stuff. So communities is what we're going to talk about today. Communities having to do with things that we are considered a part of, things that we're not, things that we're excluded from, right? And all kinds of everything, right? You know, groups practicing the same or differently than us, groups that we believe have unfair advantages, that we believe have unfair disadvantages, and all kinds of groupings which form communities. And that can be as simple as seriously like your neighborhood or the neighborhood next to you, or it could be a group of people, like look at like in high school, right? Or whatever, you have the cliques. And that's a community of people who like, you know, they cling together for a certain purpose. You know, sometimes it's like the popular kids and the not popular kids or the nerds and this and that. And I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that. But communities, we talk about like, you know, a lot of times we really want to be a part of a certain community because it makes us feel special. It makes us feel, you know, included. It makes us feel, you know, valuable and, you know, having something to bring to the table that is unique, right? Or just part of what other, and unique in the way of the others in the community, which is interesting. So, you know, like I can't tell you how many times like there like people that I have, well, there's even like people who want to be, you know, married or not married, and that's all part of a community kind of thing too. It's groupings of different people who, you know, sometimes it drives us to be better when we're in a community, right? Because we are striving to keep up with the Joneses or those who are around us, or keeps us motivated, right? And sometimes it's demotivating because we feel like we can never catch up, we can never be good enough, depending on the others within that. And then again, really, sometimes the biggest judgments that we build have to do with how others, you know, exclude you because you're not a part of that community, right? I mean, think about over the centuries, you have so many like men's groups and men's clubs and gentlemen's clubs, and women aren't allowed, and how many like even like there are like military schools and stuff that wouldn't allow women for so long, and how, you know, like even the military community, you have like certain kinds of people or even gender um, that are embraced, and then there are some that are excluded based on simply like you know, demographic statistics, right? You have the wealthy community, the 1%, and then you have 99%. But then you also have, you know, racial communities. Um, you know, there's so much about like, you know, like I grew up in New York, and in New York, there's still a lot of racial and ethnic communities that stay together because, you know, it's like generations of it, right? And I can tell you, like growing up, I had a lot of friends who were Jewish, and I wasn't Jewish. Surprise there, right? And so I would be sometimes invited to their house, and I had some who practiced, like on certain holidays, they would practice conservatism and in terms of their practices. And there were even times, I remember one time going over a friend's house who, I think it was on the Sabbath, I don't even remember, which is their Saturday. And though my friend wasn't really, you know, that into it, like the parents were, or the step parent was, I can't remember what that was, but I had to eat off of a separate set of plates because I wasn't Jewish, right? And I'm not pointing anything at that, but you know, it was funny, is like being a teenager, you're like, oh, okay, it's just plates. You know, but at the other end, I had plenty of Jewish friends and I was just sort of included as part of the family. And I mean, it's like I said, I'm just saying that just like personal things, but you have that in ethnic, like African American groups, you have it in, you know, all kinds of like Muslim belief systems. You have, you know, I remember my great grandmother was a Jehovah's Witness and she would take me into study groups and it was always about like us versus them. But that's like in every belief system, us versus them. And if you're not part, and I wasn't even a part of that group, I was just there because my great grandmother had to watch me. Then she took me with her to a study group. So, you know, it was like all kinds of things like that. And when we get into those kind of community things, like sometimes within the communities, it can be very nourishing and embracing, and it gives us a sense of well-being and inclusion and love, right? And then when we are exiled from that or excluded from that, we feel, you know, we feel like a lack or something's less than. We want to be a part of that because we feel left out. And so like that's where we have a lot of these drives that then we get angry because we felt excluded. Like here's the thing, we get angry at certain groups because they excluded us sometimes. Or, you know, like we have, let's see, ages of when I was coming up through corporate and stuff, you know, there was like what do they call that? Affirmative action stuff, right? To try to get more diversity in the workforce. I think they're doing that again, another round of that. And that sort of became like self mutilating, self-sabotaging, because it was like, well, what if we just stopped hiring people because of what they look like? What if we just like interviewed people behind a curtain so we didn't know whether they're male, female, or, you know, of any race or belief system or whatever, and just hire them for being qualified, you know? But then you have communities like, yeah, like there's so many, like the college communities, right? Going to a certain college, go to a certain kind of college. So we have all of these things and they're all built in these exclusions, right? And inclusions. So it's all very separation based. It's all very, you know, there are very many lessons about learning based on exclusion and inclusion. I had like, I just gave that one example, but I had friends of all kinds and all kinds of groups. Like that was the beauty of growing up in a melting pot like Long Island in New York, because I just grew up like as learning a part of a lot of different things, and we were at a point where there was enough of acceptance that we were allowed to sort of cross lines and whatever. And I always found it really cool because you have certain traditions and things that were maintained that you might not get access to otherwise. But it's a matter of being able to, you know, penetrate and be a part of those things. And as we go on in consciousness, part of the importance is to let go of our irritations, our resentments of the past, to embrace, instead of like pointing at our differences, which is how we sort of set up communities. Instead, we embrace our connections, right? Love and wholeness and divinity. And our uniquity is something we have in common, is that we're all unique. And so we can learn from each other instead of excluding each other because of differences, right? So it's a different way of doing it. But to do that, the first step is to really let go of the judgments and to come into a place of acceptance to say, okay, you know, we're all beautifully awesome in our unique ways because that's what we created as the facets of the divine. So on that, and you know, in the experiences that I had some really beautiful experiences of learning about different communities, different belief systems, different ethnic, you know, backgrounds, including, you know, my own and my own families, and coming to a place of understanding like, wow, look at all of these beautiful colors of the rainbow that we create. And it was great to get a taste of foods and, you know, practices and beliefs, and seeing, when you start to be able to see that, you start to see that you can connect dots of similarities versus differences. So again, to do that is to let go of the judgment, because the judgment blinds us, right? So with that is letting go of, you know, the resentment, the grudges that we hold from whatever, right? You know, Native Americans and, you know, stuff that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago now. And it's not that it's not important that it happened, but it's important to say, okay, you know, it's time to let that go, to apologize, forgive. All of us, if we look at the fact that we are all part of the divine, we're all that. We just faceted ourselves differently, and it's a different life. Could have been me in a different life. Well, I know that I was Native American in other lives. I remember that. But it's a matter of bringing it all together, realize, well, you know what, if we've had all these other lives, we've had all these experiences, we've all been all of it. So we can have that unique perspective and that difference and that beautiful color saturated of the rainbow. And also remember, in that is that holographic symphony that we've created in that. So the creation statement for today: I experience and accept all communities, past, present, and future, for what they all are and have been in the bigger picture. It's with apology, forgiveness, and love that I have gratitude for the lessons that are now complete in singularity within themselves, all of us and myself. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, open our hearts as we step out of separation back into oneness and wholeness. And we hold ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is our, from where we experience, from where we exist, and from where we create. All right. It was funny because I saw all these sort of walls in these groups, right? And doors, and we just started taking the doors down. Everybody started shaking hands and hugging each other. But then everybody like sort of kept their distinguished, individuality, but then also melded together, and that was really pretty. It was really nice. All right, so sit with that, and our affirmation for today is: I apologize to, forgive, accept, nurture, and have gratitude for the lessons in consciousness created by communities, past, present, and future, that are now complete. And let the communities be the optimal experience they were to be, and also Let's resolve our need to maintain differentiation and exclusion, right? So that we can then sort of come together in that mix, that beautiful rainbow of the saturated symphony. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and we'll see you for the next element. Bye.